Steam and Steel, a tycoon-style game where you construct a massive railway and a map to connect industries with each other. The game has been a massively popular game in the Roblox train community ever since it was released in 2023, with tons of unique-looking railways being constructed during that time. But the game does have a somewhat steep learning curve that a lot of people might struggle with. So today, at the request of the Steam and Steel community, I will be making an in-depth tutorial video on how to start out in Steam and Steel and the best tips and tricks for getting started and succeeding in the game. This video will be going over how to start your railway, the best way to make money early in game, the best choice for early in game engines, and how to grow the line into a massive class 1 railroad rivaling those of the Southern Pacific and the Pennsylvania Railroad. Not really. So without further ado, get your shovels out, firebox out, and steam pressure up as we embark on this journey for starting out in the game of Steam and Steel. So, you've just bought Steam and Steel. You've seen all the cool railways that people have made online and you want to get started, but where to start? Well, first off, let's go through the starting menu and discuss all the buttons and what they do. The first button is New Game. This is where you will create a new railway save and where we will be focusing mainly on. Load Game is how you load saves you created previously with all your railways located here. Join Game is where you will join other people's railways for either a password or them having the game being public, and Settings is useless, so ignore that one. Anyway, since you're starting out brand new, you're going to want to make a new railway save. So first, click on New Game. This will open up a menu showing off all the maps you can use for your railway. There's also Tutorial World, but it's pretty outdated and not really helpful, so you can ignore that. As you are a beginner, you want to start out on the easiest save being Coal Valley. So, click on the drop down menu and select Coal Valley, then make a name for your railway. Once that's done, press start and wait for the game to load, and boom, welcome to your new railway. So, you've created your first railway, but you're probably wondering, what am I supposed to do now? Well, to start, let's see what you spawn with. Every railway will spawn with a freight depot as the main hub of the line, where you'll sell off all the resources you collect and will be the main source of income. You'll also start out with 2 lines of track, a coaling station, a locomotive, and several pieces of rolling stock. The locomotive will differ between saves, but for Coal Valley it will be the C class, a small 222 goods engines good for starting out. You also get free ballast wagons, free flatbeds, and free stake wagons. These will be your wagons that you will haul your resources around in. You'll also start out with a set amount of cash that you'll use for building your railway in the beginning. For Coal Valley, that'll be 20k, but it varies between maps. So now that you've gotten used to what you start out with, how do you exactly build a line out? Well, to start, press B, which will open the build menu. The build menu is your best friend and the main tool you'll be using when playing Steam and Steel. The build menu has several buttons on it, so we're going to go through each of them next. The first tab is called the Track tab. This is where you'll build your line with. To start, we have 2 buttons, those being Build and Delete. As their name suggests, these are your main tools for building and deleting track and other structures in game. Pressing Build will activate the Build tool, which is a white arrow. Delete will highlight any structure in red to indicate that you can delete these. The next button is your Track Choice button. This will allow you to switch between different track types, from regular ballast to trestle to industrial trackage. Now, these will be really important if you want your trackage to be level and smooth and not Penn Central looking trackage. These are the grade and curve settings. These values allow you to control the height and curve radius of place track, which is incredibly useful later when you begin to work out building your line. The last 2 are not important for building your right of way, but are still important for your operations, those being cut down trees and re-rail mode. Cut down trees, as its name suggests, allows you to cut down trees on the map which is needed to clear a line while construction is going on. The last button is the re-rail button, which is critical as it allows you to re-rail derailed trains from either derailments or crashes, which, believe me, you will have a lot, so you'll get used to the button real quick. To use the re-rail button, first press on it. It will ask you to select the wagon which you want to re-rail. Select this wagon and then select the piece of track to re-rail it to, which must be one that's close to you, and it'll re-rail that rolling stock. The track tab isn't the only one, as there's 3 others, but we'll get into those at a later date. You probably want to get building your line, but first you gotta determine where it's going to go. So, you know how to get around the build menu somewhat? Well, let's put that to use and get building a track. First, you probably want to determine where you want this line to go. Starting out in Coal Valley, you'll have 2 nearby industries you can connect to, those being the forest camp and the farm. You can connect to either, but I suggest starting out with the forest camp, as wood is the lifeblood of the game and will literally not be able to operate the bigger industries later down the line without a source of wood. Once you've determined your destination for your line to go, you want to begin laying track. To lay track, first open up the build menu by pressing either the build button or B on your keyboard. Once there, select build mode and press on the node or white circle at the end of the track to begin placing down the track with your left mouse button. When you press this, a white blueprint mode will show up, which will show you the direction the track's going. You want to use the grade and curve tools to make the line smooth and level. To enable them, press the values to turn them on. Once you've found where you want your first spline to go, press left mouse button again to place it, and boom, you've placed your first piece of track. Continue to build the line towards the forest camp. A good recommendation is to follow the path of least resistance or least terrain you might have to dig through, as this will keep the construction costs down, which is important when starting out to save money. Once you've gotten close to the forest camp, you can either line up the track to the platform, or you can open up the build menu and go to the planner to place down a 2-track planner on the white node at each end of the forest camp platform. This will allow you to place your track parallel to the platform and keep it straight so it be as efficient as possible. Once you've completed this, make sure to extend the line out just a bit to allow for some leniency with your trains. And boom, you have connected to your first industry. But now, you gotta get the resources over to the freight depot, which will require the steam part of steam and steel for trains themselves. So, you've connected to your first industry, you have the right of way to lay it down, but now you actually gotta start running trains to and from the industry if you want to make any money. To begin, first, hop into your C class. You'll be greeted with the GUI of the steam locomotives, which may look intimidating at first, but it's actually quite simple to understand. To start off, on your left is your firebox and gauges. The firebox is your lifeline of the engine, as if the fire's not hot enough, you'll not have enough steam pressure to operate the locomotive. Above those are the 2 gauges. These are in German due to the game's location, so if you don't know German, this may be confusing to you, but to summarize, the top gauge tells you how much pressure is available. The second gauge is your boiler pressure, which shows you how much total steam pressure is in the boiler at a given time. This is built up by shoveling coal into the firebox to keep the fire hot and thus the steam pressure high. The other 4 are your locomotive controls. The first one is your reverser. How it works is the higher it is from the center, the more steam is put into the cylinder and thus more power, while the closer it is to the center, the less steam is put in, so less power but higher speeds. The next one is your throttle or regulator, which is how you control your speed. The next one after that is brake, which is pretty self-explanatory. The more it's applied, the more braking power is applied. And the final one is whistle, which allows you to blow your whistle to alert others around you. Now that you know all the controls, let's get your engine running. To start, press on the firebox several times to begin shoveling coal into the engine. Coal is located on a coal bunker behind the locomotive or a tender if you're running a tender engine. Coal will run out and thus needs to be reloaded at the coaling station, which can be activated by driving your engine to it and pressing on the big crane, which will then begin to automatically load your engine with coal until it's at its max capacity, which will vary between engine types. To start moving, put the reverser fully in the direction you intend to move. Then, bring up the throttle. Once you've gotten up to speed, you should dial back the reverser and boom, you're now driving a locomotive. But you can't just go with an engine, you need some rolling stock as well. So, bring the locomotive forward a bit until you pass a switch. Stop the engine and flip the switch onto the siding where all your rolling stock is. Then, collect the black ballast wagons or the stake wagons depending on which ones you want. You can re-rail them to the first line if you want, or shunt them. Now, to couple, you can either reverse into the wagons and they will automatically couple, or get close enough and press their couplings, which will engage them. Pressing them again will disengage them and decouple the stock. Once you've coupled, move into forward and take off to the forest camp. Once you've arrived, to bring the wagons to the platform and get out. Walk over to the big crane or white box and press E. Once there, you'll be in the industry GUI. On the left is your cargo storage, which shows how much of a cargo is currently at the industry along with how much of a certain resources to improve or is required to operate the industry has. We'll get into that later when we talk about resources. On the right is your main cargo loading GUI. Here, you can choose between different cargoes to load, load orders, which I will also get into later, and the cargo chain, which again, I will get into later. For now, select either cordwood or logs depending on which wagon you brought. For reference, ballast wagons can load cordwood and stakes can load logs, and press E to begin loading them. The cargo will load onto your wagons if they are at the platform and will stop once the wagon is full. Hop back into the C and reverse down to the freight depot, making sure to switch the track back to the freight depot track. Once you've arrived, you'll get it and press all the wagons to begin unloading them, and congratulations, you've made your first delivery and thus your first profit. You're now on your way to becoming a big railroad tycoonist. So, now you know how to deliver goods back and forth, and probably have been doing a few forest camp runs by now, but you're probably also getting bored of doing the same deliveries over and over and want to expand your line out. In that case, it's time for expansion, to the next location being the farm. The farm, as its name states, is a farm focusing mainly on food products like wheat and cattle. These two are important for other industries down the line and are great for making cash early in game. To start, you'll want to make a new branch line heading to the farm. Now, you're probably wondering how to add a new line onto your existing one. Well, to start, you'll first want to delete delete the first spline you placed down after the switch. Once you've completed that, head back to the building menu and select the Track Objects tab. Here, you'll be introduced to tons of new stuff you can add like switches, crossovers, turntables, and more. But for now, you'll want to select the switch. First, click on the right switch and select the 80-degree option. From here, you'll want to place it onto the track node coming from the existing switch, and now you have a switch. You can re-add the track you cut off to the forest camp now being connected to the switch, and from there, build a line through the mountain pass towards the farm. Connect it how you did with the forest camp, and boom, you'll be connected to a second industry. Now, grab the black ballast wagons or flat wagons and bring them to the farm to begin delivering grain, which will give you more money than logs or code words. Something I forgot to mention is that the last part is when connected up to new industries for the first time and doing delivery gives you a subsidy bonus of $5,000, which is a new feature added to help people gain some quick cash as a reward for connecting new industries. From here, you can continue to run grain deliveries to the freight depot and earn even more. Now, I'm sure by now you've been delivering for quite a while, running grain trains or wood products to the freight depot and back, but perhaps you're getting a bit tired of using your C-Class. While it's a good engine, it's not exactly that good for long-term use. You'll want to upgrade to a new engine soon and get some more power or speed onto your line. But what should you upgrade to next? Well, let's first take a look at what options you have to choose from. To start, open the shop menu by pressing N. The shop menu is where you'll buy all your new rolling stock in game, from locomotives to wagons. There's a lot here, but we're going to be going to the engines tab, which can be accessed by pressing the arrow until it reaches locomotives. Now that we've gotten here, it's time to decide on what your next engine will be. There are several options when it comes to early game locomotives, although I will admit the selection is a bit tender engine heavy. While I don't have any issues with tender engines, when it comes to early game it can be a bit of a price hike, as while the engine may be cheap, tenders are around the same price, which means you're paying double for an engine and you don't really get much out of it. Let's take a look at the A1 class. The A1 has some pretty decent stats for the price, with a weight of 12.3 tons, power of 14,671, and a speed of 21 for a price of $5,714. Pretty good price, I'd say, but you can't just run a tender engine without a tender, so you'll also need to pick up one as well. Now, the cheapest tender you can get your hands on will be the RSR 2-axle tender, which is a popular choice for engines all around. However, the tender price is $5,142, which is nearly the same price as the A1 class, and added those together comes out to a total of $10,856, which is a pretty steep asking price for a beginner on a map like Coal Valley, which can be costly to build through in some locations. Now, while you can buy this if you have the money and want to, there's actually a much cheaper and better option that I personally suggest always going for, and that is the Stig Coffee Pot. Now, you might look at this thing and think, why would I get this over a tender engine? And to that I say, stats wise, the Coffee Pot is just overall better. To explain what I mean, looking at the Coffee Pot stats, you'll notice it's actually more powerful than the A1, coming in at 15,539 power compared to the A1's 14,671. While the speed is slow at 14, it comes with a coal bunker built in, meaning you don't need a tender, and the biggest advantage is the price. The Coffee Pot comes in at a reasonable price of $7,214, being cheaper than any of the A-Class Plus tenders, making it one of the best early game locomotives for cash-strapped railways, and being more powerful than the A-Classes without having to pull a tender. Overall, the Stig Coffee Pot is an amazing early game locomotive to replace the C-Class before getting a stronger engine later down the line, and is an engine I highly recommend for any beginner player who needs a powerful, cheap engine. So, you've started a new world, learned how to use the locomotive and rolling stock, figured out the build tool and how to construct a railway line to industries, and picked up a brand new, more powerful engine to run the line. You're probably feeling pretty good about the railway so far, but it might also be feeling like things are a bit small at the moment and might be getting bored of doing the same to industries. Well, from here on out, you can do several things. You can either expand out to other industries such as the distillery or lumber mill, buy some new stock like a longer stake wagon or a cattle van, maybe build a proper yard. There are so many things you can do from here to expand your railway empire and make a big railway, and really, from here on out, it's up to you. Now, there are a few things I need to cover before letting you go off and build your next Class 1. In Part 5, I mentioned cargo chains, load orders, and resource-specific industries. Let's start. The cargo chain is basically the technical layout of how each industry operates and connects to one another. All industries are connected to the cargo chain in some way or another. For example, let's take a look at the forest camp cargo chain. As shown here, the forest camp is in the middle between the machine shop and a long list of industries. The machine shop, shown here, supplies the forest camp with tools, a resource that many industries use to help increase output of a certain good. The forest camp then breaks off into two different resources, being cordwood and logs, with each going to their respective industries. From here, stuff like logs will go to the lumber mill and end up as beams and lumber, which will end up in other industries, and so on and so forth. It's a bit complicated to figure out at first, but as time goes on, you'll eventually figure out the cargo chain. Load orders are relatively simple. In short, they basically allow you to auto-load rolling stock when it stops at the platform. To set one up, you just need to press the green button to create a new load order. From here, you'll select which wagons will be auto-loaded loaded and the resources they'll be loaded with. You can also set it to auto-renew or not if you just want a single load order. From there, press load or F and will begin auto-loading all the wagons you've selected. Now, as for resource-specific industries, it's pretty simple. Some industries will not function without certain resources from other industries. Take the distillery, for example. To operate it, you'll need wheat and cordwood, resources that come from the farm and forest camp. Once these resources are delivered to the distillery, it will begin to produce rum, which can then be sold at the freight depot. Most, if not all, industries require specific resources to operate and produce their own resources, with only 4 being self-sustaining industries, which are the forest camp, farm, fishery, and sandbar. Although the sandbar is exclusive to a stormy coast. Forgot to include this, but also the clay pits, and the other renamed counterparts and other maps. I'm also going to mention buildings here since they're the last major part of the game. Buildings are structures you can place in your world to help either improve the storage capacity of certain industries or serve the railway itself, such as the engine shed or train works. Each building serves a different purpose, such as storage sheds increasing rum storage, or storage bunkers improving the amount of minerals the mine/quarry produces. The train works is special as it decreases the price of rolling stock and locomotives, along with giving them a new place to spawn when buying them, making for a really good addition to any growing railway. Congratulations! You've learned most of the stuff you'll need to begin your railway career in Steam and Steel. From here, you'll upgrade your engines, rolling stock, right-of-ways, and cash flow, and eventually become a big tycoonist. Thank you all so much for watching this really long video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope this video helped you if you're just starting on Steam and Steel, or need help if you haven't played it in a while. Tell me in the comments if there's anything else you'd like me to explain in-game, or if you have your own tips and tricks for starting out. Anyway, tune in next time for yet another Steam and Steel episode, or Engines of Summer Whales episode 11 on Spitfire. Thanks again, and I'll see you all later. Have a great day.